So Barry, you learnt the art of the deal, and you were, you come up tough. You were a fighter in the true sense of the word. But were there different ways to approach each battle with difficult individuals, and how soon did you suss people out before you knew which way to approach them?
I think there are times when I've been very good at sussing people out, and other times when I haven't. So there's no really fixed rules. When you come to looking at people you want to employ, I always look in their eyes. I need to see passion. I need to see emotion. I don't need bland. I don't need boring. We're a personality-led business. I'm a reasonable sized person. My son is a huge personality globally. But that drives our business and drives our reputation. Now we have to deliver to justify that respect. But when you talk to people, I think you've got to be prepared to adjust your tactics by the personality involved. So initially when you're doing deals or whether you're meeting people for the first time, the early stages of that process is to discover the animal you're dealing with. Do they have weaknesses? Have they got ego? Do they need being nice to? Do they need to be, give them the benefit of let them think they're tougher than you are? That's fine. I mean, we've had a lot of deals where we've nearly got a deal done, and my favourite is always to take a coin out of my pocket and just toss them for the bit we're disputing. One is I believe I'm a lucky person, I think I'm always going to win. But two is that's a challenge to the other side. Are you man enough for this? I remember selling some arcades once to some people that were a little bit strange, and we couldn't agree the price, and it was, at the time it was a lot of money. And I said to this guy, look, we both want to do a deal, but both of our egos won't allow us to concede. So I'll toss you for £50,000. And the guy, I nailed him dead right. He couldn't turn that down, because to turn it down made him a lesser man, if you follow me. And of course I won, but I haven't won all of them. I've just won most of them.
Now, something else that you said, once again going back to my research, you said that pressure is only felt by those that fail, and it's all about how people deal with pressure that sets them apart. Now, you must have been under immense pressure quite a few times. How did you deal with it?
I mean, it comes down to self-belief. People talk, sometimes people use words that they don't live up to. Confidence, self-belief, aggressive behaviour, being able to change with the times, being able to take a punch. A bit like a fight, really, There's never been a decent boxer that can't take a punch as well as give a punch. And business is the same. There are times when it doesn't go too well. You get floored a few times. The difference is you've got to have that self-belief to get up again and go again. And eventually, so far, the light at the end of the tunnel is no longer a train coming towards you. It's the land of milk and honey.
But if you never had like a sleepless night?
Yeah, possibly. But not something I would ever register, not something I would ever tell anyone. I wouldn't tell my wife if I was under pressure. This is an independent personal approach. It's my responsibility. I'm a little bit old-fashioned, I know. But I believe in God. I believe I'm doing the right thing. I believe I deserve to win. Now it's up for me to do the hard graft in between to make my case. But in 88, 89, when we hit a big recession, I went from being quite wealthy to being very poor again, and owing the banks millions of pounds because the market conditions didn't allow me to make a profit. But it didn't eliminate my desire to be a sports promoter, someone that delivered events for people to enjoy and for sportsmen and women hopefully to change their life through their own ability. But there was 2 or 3 years there where it wasn't at all pleasant. But you have to be resilient. I think, when I say pressure is only felt by those that fail, pressure is used as an excuse to fail. I never considered myself under pressure, even if I was under huge pressure with the banks and the tax man and everything. because I felt I was destined to win eventually. The question was, could I stick in there long enough to get to that point? And somehow, I mean, I can remember going down Romford Billiard Hall and emptying the fruit machines twice a week so I could pay the wages. And this wasn't a multi-millionaire lifestyle. But eventually, again, the good Lord smiles, and suddenly Sky Television came in. Like they were the Mounties rescuing me. They were the guys coming over the top, the cavalry coming over the hill to my rescue. And the moment Sky started from 1990, we haven't really had a year where we've looked back on and said that wasn't a success. In life, as in business, you need momentum. The word I hate more than this is complacency. When you think you've made it and you haven't really started, because who knows how far we can all go. You know, we're only limited by our own imagination. My imagination runs riot in my head all the time. It does now. But I never set a target, because that's the end of the game. So my target has always only been to live as long as possible and play the game as long as I can, and to win the game every year. And it's black and white. How have I done this year? You know, COVID took a little bit off our profits for 2 years. But the year after COVID, my profits nearly doubled because of what I'd learned going through those difficult times. So you have to be prepared to adjust. You have to be prepared to be creative. And every now and again, you have to dig in. And you say, we're going to have a tough little ride for a little while. So brace yourself. COVID was like that, I think, those 2 years. I gathered all my people in a room and said, we've got 700 event days to promote. Suddenly we got 0. Everything's closed down. What on earth do we do? I'm responsible for employees' wages. I'm responsible for sportsmen and women's earnings because they're self-employed. If there's no events, they don't make any money. So it wasn't an option for me to do nothing. I'm not that type of person. I take my responsibilities very seriously. But fortunately, I've got a team of management that came up with half a dozen ideas, one of which was staging boxing matches on the lawn just outside where we were talking. Who'd have thought that? Cost me $1.25 million to dress this place up for a pay-per-view boxing night. But it made a fortune because we rolled the dice, we believed in ourselves, and we gambled.
Now, you mentioned it in what you've just said there, that you don't share a vulnerability, and you've written that as well. Do you think that that's obviously a big strength, but do you think sometimes that is a slight weakness as well, that you can't share it and unload it? It may
be, but we can only be what we are. I mean, the one person that you've got to be truthful to, yourself, all the time. You've got to, if you don't tell yourself the truth, I have conversations in the mirror sometimes with myself, just to check on how things are going. Because the only person in the world I can rely on to be 101% truthful is the person I'm talking to, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So if you want to be, you know, people talk about, oh, he's done well, he's lucky, this. A lot of it comes back to who you are. And you have to ask yourself that question. Is this a life I really want? I'm a good accountant. I can make a nice living working for a firm. I didn't want that type of life. I asked myself, have I got more? Well, I believe I had. And I think I've been justified. I've been very fortunate in life. I've done extremely well. But at the bottom of it comes a self-belief that some people find really annoying. I am a very difficult person to beat. Very difficult. In fact, you know, someone once said about me, you're not the brightest candle in the room, but you burn longer than anyone I've ever met. I'm a good operator. And I don't say that to be flash or big-headed. It's just honest. I think I'm the best in the world.
Now, you said that you don't do business with people that you don't like. Now, that must have been a luxury that you've been able to use later in your career.
I think I got a little bit more selective as I got older. But early doors, I wanted to do business. Who I was doing business with and what type of business it was wasn't necessarily my choice. because I was going out to expand my business. I wanted to be bigger. And if I didn't particularly like people, I learned a trick from a past employee many years ago who used to put a naught on his price if he didn't like the people he was dealing with, because it made him feel better about himself. And I can understand that. I think these days I'm in a much more fortunate position that people want to do business with Matchroom, with me, obviously with Eddie and the rest of the team. We've built that respect, and that's taken a lifetime. It's 50 years I've been in the sports business. It's taken me 50 years to get that respect, you know. I mean, my wife always jokes about the OBE. She says, the Beatles gave it back. You should give it back. And I said, I've been 50 years trying to make this. I'm not giving anything back at all. You know, it's respect that you get in the industry, and the phone calls that I get now, people know what they want. I'm not out like in a Romford market pitching on a stall, which I was for years. My wife said to me for the first 25 years of my business, every day I went out, every day early. She used to say, have you got your begging bowl with you, dear? I say, I never go anywhere without it. But today is a slightly different world, and that's a position that we've earned.
Now, you also said that, you mentioned earlier, complacency is the great enemy. Have you always been ahead of the thing there, or did you have to find it the hard way to drive that home?
No, I hope not. I think there's no doubt I'm a much softer individual than I was when I was younger, no question. And that's a form of complacency, but it's a pleasant form of it. Complacency is when you think you've hit your target, you've achieved what you want. In 1982, I made some money, and I thought that was it. I was going to retire. I was 34. That was a form of complacency, because it wasn't it. And it would have been a disaster had I retired. I tried it for 6 weeks. I was climbing up walls. I need to do deals to breathe. I need to be out there. I need to be pitching. I need to be listening. I need to be creating. I need to be watching. I need to be applauding. And I need to have that lovely warm glow of self-satisfaction when things go well. And they won't always go well, but when they do, they're even sweeter.
Now, you mentioned earlier that things weren't going very well at one point. You nearly lost everything. You owed the banks loads of money. And that you were, in your book, you say you were considering, well, I could always be an accountant again.
Yeah.
That was probably the only bit in the book I didn't actually believe, because you didn't actually ever seriously think you were going to be an accountant again.
It was bad. It was 3 years of my life when I wasn't a very pleasant person. And, you know, we all like to think we can cope with any situation, but human nature says you can't. Even me, the world's most optimistic and happiest person, has bad days. But this was a bad 3 years. And you do. I remember pitching to Trust House 40 for a sponsorship deal, which I really needed. It was £300,000 I wanted. And I went to see them on Christmas Eve. It's 4 o'clock. And funny enough, the guy's name was Alan Hearn, no relation. And I did the worst pitch ever for this sponsorship I needed for an event that was starting in January. And this was probably the last roll of the dice. It was, again, the comparisons with a fight. I was going back to the corner saying, I don't think I can win this fight. But as great fighters, and I was never physically a great fighter, but as great fighters in business tell you, you go out on your shield. And I made this terrible pitch, and the man just turned around and said, well, I've got no money. And I thought, that was the one moment in my life where I thought, that's it. And that's when I thought, I'm a chartered accountant. I can always get a job. I'm pretty smart. I won't starve, my family won't suffer. And I thought that was probably me going back at the end of the 11th round and saying to the corner, pull me out. I'd had enough. And I just said to him, well, Mr. Hearn, have a lovely Christmas. Have a great New Year. God bless you and your family. Turned around, went to walk out the door, and he said, but I have got hotel rooms. And I said, what does that mean? He said, well, as you know, we have hotels all over the world, which they did. Sandy Lane in Barbados, Place Ratheny in New York, Georges in Paris. I mean, just so many beautiful hotels, Waldorf Hotel in London. He said, I will give you £300,000 of hotel rooms, but I've got no cash. And we shook hands and we did a deal. And by the time I'd walked back to Slough Station from his offices, I'd sold them all to friends in the travel business at a 40% discount. And that 300,000 became 180 grand. But that deal saved my business.